Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're looking at a really fascinating text. It explores some pretty deep cultural differences.
It really does. And what's interesting is how the source approaches it.
Right. It deliberately avoids naming any countries. The whole point seems to be just showing how different cultures can function, trying to build understanding.
Exactly. No judgment, no nationalism. Just here are two ways societies can operate based on the author's observations. It lets us focus purely on the behaviors described.
Yeah, I like that framing. So our mission here is to really unpack the examples the source gives, the everyday stuff, the interactions.
We want to highlight the core distinctions the author is drawing between these two cultural approaches. See what makes them tick, according to this text.
And for you listening, getting a handle on these fundamental differences, things like communication, politeness, even how people handle conflict, it offers some, well, really valuable insights.
Definitely. It helps you realize that what feels completely normal or, courteous to you might look totally different, maybe even strange from another perspective.
Okay, so let's get into it. The source starts by describing one type of culture it calls polite. What's the first thing it points out?
Well, right away, it talks about greetings. Just basic stuff like saying good morning or good afternoon to strangers. The source suggests this isn't like an occasional thing. It's woven into daily life.
Mm-hmm.
And in stores, for example, it mentions that more conversational style. Like the example, "Hi, sweetie, how are you? Can I have an apple pie?" The source calls it the gentle way.
The gentle way. Okay, so it sounds like it's about using softer language, maybe pleasantries, to keep things smooth, avoid friction.
Precisely. That seems to be the idea. And this focus on politeness, according to the source, isn't just verbal. It's also about actions. Opening doors, looking out for people who seem weaker.
And it mentions things like second chances, compassionate action.
Yeah, even when, as the source puts it, it might not be strictly deserved by some rigid standard, there's a flexibility there.
And here's a point the source really emphasizes. The word sorry. In this polite culture, the text says, people admit when they're wrong. They actually say sorry.
That's presented as a really key difference. And alongside that, the source talks about the language being full of encouragement. Congratulations, good job, my best wishes, we can do it.
So it's about boosting morale.
Seems like it. The source suggests someone with a good spirit communicates better, so that positive language is important.
The source also gives some quite vivid examples of social support, going way beyond just friends and family.
Oh yeah, things like giving strangers a lift, volunteering with the homeless, adoption support, fundraising for people in need.
These are for people they don't even know.
Right. And the reason the source gives is actually pretty practical. It's like they understand that if you leave people without help, it eventually becomes everyone's problem, could lead to hunger, maybe violence.
So helping others is sort of framed as helping the whole community and yourself by extension.
That seems to be the perspective presented in the source, yeah. A kind of enlightened self-interest, maybe.
Okay, let's shift to communication style. This feels really significant. The source says they don't often give orders. Instead, we give people choices.
It is a big one. The example used is asking, would you like to befriend those people for me, even if it's technically part of their job?
So framing it as an option.
Exactly. Because, the source explains, they recognize someone might just be having a bad day, and keeping a good long-term relationship with an employee or whoever is seen as more important than just barking an order.
Right, respecting the individual's current state. The source also brings up sick leave, medical leave, the idea that humans need rest.
And allowing breaks during work for tiredness, mental or physical, it reinforces that view of looking after the individual.
What's the core belief behind that, according to the source?
It seems to boil down to this idea that, well, adults shouldn't really be taking orders from other adults. The language reflects it. It's more like, sure, would you like to eat? Or how can I help you? Not just directing or assuming.
Interesting. And does this philosophy carry over into how society is structured?
The source suggests it does. It mentions things like rotating leadership, electing presidents, for instance, because there's an understanding that, no single person knows everything or can do everything.
Collective decision-making, maybe?
Yeah, like voting in board meetings is another example given. Distributing that power. And there's a detail about equality that stands out: riding public transport.
The train example.
Right, specifically mentioning an ordinary train in New York City where, as the source puts it, everybody rides in the same train no matter who you are. No separation by class or wealth.
Okay, so that paints a picture. Polite, choice-oriented, supportive, somewhat egalitarian in practice, according to the source. But then the source presents a massive contrast, another culture.
Oh, completely different, like night and day based on this description. The first thing the source highlights is reacting to accidents, bumping into someone, stepping on their shoe.
What happens?
In this other culture, the source says they just don't say sorry, period.
And the reason given.
It's seen as a sign of weakness. Or, even more fundamentally, the source points out that in some cases the actual word sorry might not even exist in their language.
Wow. That suggests a really, really deep difference in how they even think about responsibility or accidents.
It absolutely does. And their reaction to what the first culture considers politeness, it's described as, well, negative.
How so?
Saying good morning to strangers might make people think you're crazy. Trying to be courteous could apparently mark you as an imbecile, according to the source.
An imbecile. That's strong.
Yeah. The source even says their language can sound like yelling to an outsider, and that lack of, softening things extends to requests.
Still no could or would.
Nope. The source says everything is in order.
And what about helping people if they see someone in need?
Instead of asking, how can I help, the source claims they just throw whatever they want at that person. No asking, no dialogue.
Just assuming the need and providing something.
Seems like it. And this pattern, this lack of asking or offering choices, it ties into their view of leadership too, according to the text.
How does that work?
The source says they operate with the idea that one man can stay in power indefinitely and run everything. A stark contrast to the rotating leadership idea.
And the trains. You mentioned the contrast earlier.
Right. Instead of everyone together, this second culture, as described, has trains literally split by class 1, class 2. And you get fined if you're in the wrong one.
A very visible physical separation based on status. What about disagreements or anger?
The source describes conflict expression using violence and anger, slamming doors, throwing things when mad, presented as acceptable within that cultural context.
That sounds intense. Does it affect things like business?
Apparently so. The source mentions people yelling at customers, even like physically touching them if they can't close a sale. Yeah, and the taxi driver example is quite graphic, yelling, "Come here," like an order, grabbing luggage without asking. The source says it looks like a kidnapping to us, the first culture, but for them, it's normal.
That really drives home how different the norms can be. What's alarming in one place is just Tuesday in another.
Exactly. And the source notes the absence of customer service as the first culture understands it. You buy something, that's it. No returns, the transaction's final.
Any other examples the source throws in?
A few, yeah. Different dating customs are mentioned, like meeting parents super early without warning, and smaller things that reveal assumptions, like having to pay for shopping carts or for using public toilets.
Details that add up to a different way of operating. The source uses the word proud to describe this culture.
It does. And it notes that things like monopoly and oligarchy are the keys to prosperity, in their view. Opportunity is often framed as being very much about who you know.
Okay, and there was another point about language.
Yeah.
Something about literalness.
Oh, right. This is fascinating. The source claims everything is taken very, very literally.
How so?
Like, if you end a letter with sincerely, someone from this culture might genuinely ask, why are you sincere now? They don't get it as just, a standard polite closing.
They interpret it as a literal statement of your current feeling.
That's what the source suggests. They don't see the convention. And there's that specific example about buying hot dogs.
Without the bread, right?
Yeah. You ask for just the sausage, and the answer is a flat no, you cannot buy a hot dog without bread. The source interprets this as them thinking in black and white, 0 and 1, nothing in between.
No flexibility, just sticking rigidly to the category, hot dog equals sausage plus bread.
It seems to highlight a real difference in how rules, requests, information are processed, a preference for clear, maybe inflexible lines.
So the source author wraps up by kind of asking which culture someone might prefer. But as we said, our goal here wasn't to choose sides.
Not at all. It was just to understand the distinctions the author presents, using the examples directly from the text.
And what these examples really hammer home is just how profoundly different ways of interacting and seeing the world can be.
Absolutely. I mean, from whether you say sorry to how literally you take language, how you express anger, how society and even business is structured, these aren't small tweaks.
They show that really basic social cues, basic expectations can be completely different worlds apart. And recognizing these patterns, the ones laid out in the source, hopefully helps you, the listener, approach things with more curiosity.
Less judgment, more curiosity. That feels like the key takeaway from exploring this source material.
It does. Which leads to a final thought, pulling from what we've discussed from the source. If something as simple as saying sorry, or how you offer help,